Hello, and welcome back to my Witchy Ways series. I apologise that it's been a couple of weeks since I've been able to film a video because I have been working on the final edits of my latest book, the Book of Hedge Druidry, which is through Llewellyn Publishing. And I'm really pleased about this book, and it's going to be available later this summer. So we're looking at August for the release date, July or August. Hedge Druidry is one of the traditions that I follow in my pagan and earth-based spirituality, but another path that I follow is hedge witchcraft, and this series is all about my hedge witchcraft practice. And today I'd like to tell you a little bit about the tools that I use in my hedge witchcraft. In a previous video you saw different altars and shrines that I have around my home, and this is the main working altar that I use indoors for my witchy workings. It's just an old pine chest. It contains my winter clothes, and when the seasons are reversed, it contains my summer clothes. So this is where I do a lot of my working. If I'm not working outside, and I do work outside as much as I can, but if it's just not feasible to be working outside, I will be working in here, and I also like to do daily meditations here as well. So as you can see, it's decked out with a whole bunch of paraphernalia. Some of it you might be familiar with, some of it you might not. But I'll go through the tools here one by one of everything that I have on my altar and ready to hand in my hedge witchcraft practice. So let's work from right to left then. There's a whole bunch of little fetishes that I have on my altar. Just little charms, things that I've picked up while out and about walking in nature. And I like to keep these little fetishes, these little charms, in a pouch that I can wear if I want to around my neck, or I can loop it around the belt. And this is actually one of the oldest tools that I have. I bought this probably about nearly 30 years ago. So this is one of my oldest tools, and it's just a simple little leather pouch. Next I have my Athomie. Now this is a fairly new purchase for me. Before I simply worked with just a normal hunting knife that I got actually in Sweden. So this is a fairly recent purchase. I had an Athomie before many years ago, probably about 20 years ago. But I gave it away when I moved across to the UK. It was just too difficult to try and get through customs at the time. So this is my new Athomie. It has a pentacle on it, a pentagram held within a circle, and it is has a ebonized wooden handle, and it's just a very plain, simple blade. Now the Athomie in witchcraft is used for various different things. It depends on the tradition. I use the Athomie sometimes to cast the circle, other times I use my wand. And like the wand, what the Athomie does is it focuses power. So you use it as a focal point to push out your own personal power, you can bless items, you can cast the sacred circle, all of that sort of thing. So you would simply use your Athomie, you would point it, and you would push energy out into whatever it is that you are doing with your Athomie. It's essentially used to guide and to direct energy. Traditionally, the Athomie is a black-handled knife. The next item I have is the knife that I was talking about earlier. This is a hunting knife that I got in Sweden many, many years ago, and it has a pale wooden handle with antler bone at the very tip, and as you can see, different bands of painted wood in all sorts of rainbow colors, which I really liked. This used to be my main working knife until I got my new Athomie, and I think it still is. I'm still getting used to having my new Athomie, but this knife feels much more comfortable in my hand, and it can be seen similar to the Valine, which is a knife that is often used in the Wiccan tradition, which is described as a white-handled knife, and it's a knife that is used for the practical reasons, whereas the Athomie is used in ritual for magical purposes, such as directing energy. The Valine is used in ritual to cut herbs, cords, inscribe symbols on candles, that sort of thing. This is your practical knife. You take this out with you when you're out in nature and you want to harvest herbs or that sort of thing, or collect small branches, and traditionally, as I said, it's a white-handled knife. Now this might be because in the antiques world, items such as knives or spoons or that sort of tool that has a white handle is termed Valine, which is, I think it's a bastardization of the French baleine, which is whale. So I think tools that have a white bone handle, which are termed baleen in the antique world, much as tream is the term used for wooden objects. I think it's an old derivative from baleine, which refers to items that are made out of whalebone. So that might be where the term Valine comes from. So this is my practical knife, and my very, very pretty knife, and it even comes in its own lovely little sheath. Next we have my wand, and this is a wand that I made myself. It is from birchwood, one of the trees in my garden last summer started to blow over in the wind, and we had to trim a lot of branches very quickly in order to take the weight off and then winch the tree back up and tie it into the hedge. So this is a branch from that tree, and I have stripped off the wood, stripped off the bark, made a little handle, and have a quartz crystal at the tip. Now the wand, like I said earlier, similar to the Athomie, is used to direct energy in ritual. So you use it as a tool to cast the circle. You can also use it as a tool to invoke the gods. You can use it as a tool to invoke the fair folk if you wish. I kept my wand fairly small so that it's easily portable, and I can carry it with me everywhere. Wherever I am out in nature going for a walk, I can have my wand with me. Next, we just have a simple little ceramic bowl that has salt in it, and salt is used in ritual to consecrate the sacred circle or the sacred space. Normally you would mix the salt with water and then sprinkle it around the circle in order to bless the space. And I'll just jump ahead a little bit. This is a little bowl that I have to hold water for that very purpose. In ritual you can use your Athomie to bless the salt. You can touch the salt with your Athomie to bless it, and then you would sprinkle a little salt into your bowl of water. And you can do the same again with your Athomie or with your wand. You purify the water by pushing out your own personal energy, saying various words that are appropriate, and then you would have water that is ready to be used in the ritual to bless and consecrate the sacred space. Next here we have a censer, and this is used to hold incense. This is one that I got from Starchild in Glastonbury, and it's a simple clay pottery incense holder. It's half filled with sand, and then it has a burning charcoal tablet on the top. And what you do is you simply take some loose incense. Again, this is from Starchild in Glastonbury. They do wonderful incenses. And you sprinkle a little bit of incense onto that burning charcoal tablet. There are many different types of censers and many different types of incense that you can use in ritual and in your witchcraft tradition. This is for burning loose incense. It's for burning powder incense as well. You may simply prefer to use cone incense. And if you're using cone incense, you can use it in this type of burner. But I also have this little burner, again, which is half filled with sand. And you just take a little bit of cone incense and you burn it on top of this. This is actually a salt cellar that I got in an antique centre. Normally it has a little glass liner, and the Victorians would have a tiny, tiny spoon, and they would ladle out their salt onto their plates from this salt cellar. This is silver plated, and it's under £10. They are super cheap. You can find them at any car boot sale, any flea market, any antique centre, very, very cheaply. If you're using stick incense, then you might have an incense burner, much like this one, where the stick incense goes in here, and then all the ashes fall into the little tray. I might do a separate video just on incense, a brief video showing you how to use the different incenses. Here I have some prayer beads, otherwise known as a mala, and it comes in its own little prayer bead container, which is lovely. Prayer beads are used in various different traditions all over the world, from Christianity to Buddhism, and now lots and lots of pagans are actually using prayer beads as well. And basically you would hold the prayer beads. There are different ways to hold it. I just prefer using my thumb and index finger and saying a prayer with each bead as you meditate upon the words that you're saying and the intention. And you would hold them, pray until you make your way all around to the other end where you have finished your prayer, your meditation. There are 108 beads in total, and it's a lovely way to use sound and to use your voice both in ritual, in prayer, and in meditation. It's a wonderful way to recharge your own personal and spiritual batteries. Again, just little ornaments, bits and pieces. Here's an antler that I got in the New Forest, and I work with heron energies a lot, so again, this is just a very simple carved wooden heron. Here I have my pendulum, and a pendulum is used in divination. It's a very simple one. You can make your own pendulums very, very easily, just with a piece of string and just any rock tied to the end of it. Sewing needles are very popular. Just have a sewing needle at the base, and you would basically hold it over an object, and depending on which way the pendulum is swinging, whether it's going in a line or whether it's going in a circle, would dictate the answer. And you simply decide what the answer is going to be before you start your working. So you would ask a question such as, is my name Joanna van der Hoeven? And let's see, the pendulum is going around in a little circle, so that would mean yes. And if I said, is my name David Bowie? And the pendulum is now, what's it doing? It's moving in a line backwards and forwards, so that would mean no. And then from there on, I could go ahead with my divination and ask certain questions and receive answers. Here we have some candles. Most witch altars will have candles. It sets a lovely atmosphere, and just for plain practical reasons, it also gives you extra light. Whether it's daytime, nighttime, that little extra bit goes a long way into setting the atmosphere. Various stones here that I have collected throughout my travels or that have been given to me. And here we have my Pentacle. So the Pentacle is a tool that is used to bless items. It's a tool of very earthy energies. This one was made for me by Win Abbott. She does wonderful ceramics in the UK. And it has a nice velvet back so that when you're putting it on surfaces such as a wooden surface, you're not going to scratch the surface. And what you use your Pentacle tool for, like I said, is to bless certain items with it. So if you're working in a very Wiccan tradition, you would have your water and your salt on your Pentacle to bless it and to hold these items while you are preparing the items for use within the circle. You can also use your Pentacle as the space where you perform your spellcraft. So you could have candles burning on it. You could bless your tools with it. So if you are consecrating your tools, which is something that we will cover in a different video, you would place them on here as part of the consecration. The Pentacle has the pentagram on it, which is the 5-pointed star. And the points relate to the different elements, the 4 elements, plus the 5th element, which is spirit. So earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. The pentagram itself is a very ancient symbol. It's a pre-Christian symbol, and Christians even used it in early Christianity as well. And it's a lovely symbol. It's very anthropomorphic if you think of the human body with the head, the arms, and the legs. You could see it as symbolizing the entirety. You could see it as a symbol of the macrocosm contained within the microcosm of the pentacle itself. Here we just have some lovely, simple dried flowers. I use dried flowers on my altar because this is a very warm room, and especially in the winter, the sun shines right on this altar, and fresh flowers would only last a day or two on here before they wilt and get too warm. So I tend to use dried flowers on the altar for decoration, and they change with the seasons as well. So right now they're in kind of pinks and whites and blues, same as the candles, to represent Beltane. We recently had Beltane celebrations, and the full moon of Beltane is actually coming up as well. And this just reflects what's happening outside. So the apple blossom and the cherry blossom, all these pink blossoms are coming out. So I have the pink colors on my altar at the moment to represent what's happening outside in nature and bringing it inside for my altar. I've already discussed water. I have a little unicorn here simply because I heart unicorns. and I always have, and I always will. Next I have my goblet or chalice. This is used in ritual to hold any drink that you might be using in ritual. You could also use it to hold any potions that you might be crafting. It's a wonderful symbol of the goddess in a lot of witchcraft traditions, whereas the Athomie would be seen, the Athomie and the wand would normally be connected to the god. The chalice or the cauldron are often seen as very goddess symbols, and you can think of it in terms of Arthurian myth, where the knights go out seeking the divine feminine. They're seeking the holy grail, the chalice, the receptacle that holds the femininity and the female divine. And you would use this in ritual, like I said, to hold a libation. So at the end of many rituals, you would have some food and drink that you would take a little bit of yourself for yourself and then offer the rest back to the land to symbolize your sharing of the blessings with the land. In a lot of Wiccan traditions, the chalice is the tool to have on your altar, and it would take like a prominent place in your altar, in the center of your altar. For me, it's, you know, it's just as important as all the other tools on my altar. So I don't place a specific prominence on my chalice per se, but it is a sacred and it is a holy object for me. And here we have the older version of the chalice, which is the cauldron, and I keep my witch runes in here. So the cauldron, this is just a simple plant pot, I think from the 1960s, that my mum had for ages and ages on her kitchen windowsill, and after I begged her for many, many years, she gifted it to me. And it's simply just a small brass pot with feet, and you can fill it with liquid. You could burn herbs and pieces of paper for spell work in it, and it's a lovely and very useful container to use in your witchcraft practice. And when I do a later spellcraft video, maybe we'll be using a cauldron so I can show you some of the things that you can do with this lovely tool. I have my little witch runes kept within the cauldron, and these are a tool, again a tool that is used for divination, and they're very different from the Norse runes that are used in some witchcraft traditions or pagan traditions. There are 8 to 13 of these, depending on who's made the runes. And they are said to be remnants of a Romany gypsy tradition. There's a wonderful book on using the witch runes, and I'll put the link in for that book in the information for this video. Here we just have some, again, little fetishes that I've collected from the seashore because I live close to the sea. I have a little seashell, and I have a small triskel here painted onto a quartz crystal that was gifted to me by a lovely lady and a very close friend of mine. Here we have a hold stone, or a holy stone, or a hag stone. And this is very common on the beaches where I live. It's a piece of flint that has a hole that has naturally been bored through it, usually through other stones being pushed around and moved around within it for thousands and thousands of years until it's created this hole. And this is said to be a goddess stone. Most stones that have holes in them are related to the goddess. It's a wonderful stone that you can use in spellcraft. It's popular here in Suffolk to put normally a red thread through your stone and you would hang it on the barn door of your stable to stop the witches from riding your horse in the night. So if you came in the morning and you found your horse all lathered and sweaty and tired, it would be said that the witches had been riding your horse. Usually that just means your horse is kind of sick and needs some attention. If witches want to ride horses, they will normally ask first. Or take lessons like I did. But that's just a folkloric association of the Hag Stone. That's why it's called a Hag Stone here in Suffolk. And another thing that you can use the Hag Stones for is to see the fairies or to see the fair folk. You can hold it up to your eye and look through it at different and special places. And if you're lucky, you might catch a glimpse of the fair folk. Here I just have another simple painted stone that I got from an Etsy shop. I cannot remember what the name of the shop is, but it just has a picture of the earth goddess painted on to this little stone, and I just thought it was very pretty, so it's living here on my altar. Next I have a bell branch. This is actually a tool that is often used in the Druid tradition. It's a tool that you will find reference to in Celtic mythology. But I also use this in my witchcraft tradition as well. It's a tool that announces your intention for ritual, and it's a tool that signals that you are about to work and walk between the worlds. So you would shake the branch 3 or 9 times at the beginning of a ritual to signify to yourself, to anybody else in the ritual, and also to the other world that you are now crossing the boundaries between the worlds. It's a wonderful tool. I made this myself, again with a branch, a birch branch from the tree that fell over last year, and wove ribbons that signify the different realms of land, of sea, and of sky, and just with some basic silver colored bells. This is called a bell branch in Celtic tradition. And lastly on my altar here I have a very unorthodox broom. This was made for this was made by a chap in Essex who uses local wood and puts Druid ogham, which is the runic equivalent in the Druid tradition, and different oghams pertaining to the different woods. So this is gorse wood, and this is the ogham, or ogham, however you want to pronounce it, for gorse. And I chose this one specifically because I live on the heath, and there is lots and lots of gorse growing all around me, and I have an affinity because yellow is my favorite color, and gorse bushes have beautiful yellow flowers that are in bloom at the moment, and they smell like coconut. They're fabulous. I use this as a broom to sweep away negativity, and you can also use it to consecrate an area with incense, if you're using incense as well as water and salt to consecrate an area. You can push the smoke from the incense throughout the circle. You can also use it to sain, to smudge, or to bless yourself as well with the smoke. It's a very untraditional broom, but I like it, and it's got goose feathers in it. Another item which doesn't reside on my altar all the time, but just beside it, is an offering bowl. So this is a bowl where you could place offerings such as wine or food. I also sometimes use this bowl to scry, and that's when you are using something to using something for divination purposes. So I would fill it with water, I would place it on my pentacle, and I would gaze into the depths of the water to receive insight, images that are pertaining to the question that I am asking. So it's a multi-purpose bowl. Again, it's made by Win Abbott Ceramics. And it's a lovely, plain, but very, very useful tool to have. And finally, I have, down here at the bottom of my altar, is my staff. And this is a staff that was made for me by one of the first couples that I performed a hand fasting ceremony for many, many years ago. It's made out of hazelwood, and the chap was like a park ranger. He was like a woodsman, and he crafted this for me out of a piece of hazelwood, and I simply adore it. It's wonderful, it's lightweight, it's very useful when walking out and about in the countryside to stop you from falling ass over tit in certain areas. It's also very useful in ritual as a symbol of the world tree, the Axis Mundi, something that I use to help me travel between the worlds. And often I will meditate in ritual. I will sit cross-legged and have the staff here in front of me and feel that world tree that connects me to all three worlds. And I can use this to travel between the worlds. So it's, again, this is a multi-purpose tool. It's very plain. A lot of witches or druids or other pagan staffs will be beautifully carved and have feathers and crystals and all sorts on it. But I really I simply adore the plain Jane character of this. It means I can easily take it on an airplane when I'm going home. I can take it on a bus, on a train, and I'm not going to get strange looks because it's not very tall. It only comes up to my waist. As it's like a regular walking stick. So this is a very useful, very helpful, practical, but also extremely magical tool that I use in my tradition. So those are basically all the tools that I use in my hedge witchcraft tradition. There are other tools that are used for spellcraft, and I will cover those in a different video, such as herbs and puppets and all of that sort of thing. So I hope that you've enjoyed this whirlwind tour of the tools of the hedge witch, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Thanks. Bye.